Hey everybody, Darth Boy here. So, if it looks like I'm kind of in some pain right now, that's because it's really early in the morning. I think it's like 5:25 as I'm recording this, 5:25 a.m. And I just made some bitchin' ramen, like it's this brown rice ramen. I made it with some brie cheese, some Italian seasoning, some basil oil. It's fucking good. Probably one of the best things I've ever made. Probably the best thing I made during this fucking pandemic, honestly. Okay, but this isn't about Darth Boy's cooking. I mean, I think I'm an okay cook, but whatever. What I want to talk about really is my fears for the Joe Biden era. I don't think he's going to extend any of Trump's worst policies. He's already done a 180 on the border wall. He's really ramping up vaccines. He's probably going to use this act. I forget what the hell the act's called, and apologies for not knowing what the hell this specific act is called, but this will allow for pharmaceutical companies to make vaccines as though we were in wartime. And Joe Biden wisely said that we have to view this as if we're in a war. I mean, look how many people died. More people died because of this pandemic than they did in World War II. This is like how many 9/11s? I mean, I'm not sure if this is categorized under Chomsky's theory of manufacturing consent, but if it is, I think I'm kind of getting seduced by it because goddamn does it feel good to have a president who's competent, to have someone who has been in government, who knows what the fuck they're doing, who's competent, and has seemingly a strong desire to get America out of this shit. Trump obviously had no plan. That's probably why there was no traditional transition, similar to what, well, every other president has done from probably since the founding of this country. For modern context, in the late 20th to early 21st century, to now anyway, Clinton let Bush in on what the hell he needed to have to be president. Bush did it with Obama. Obama did it with Trump. And Trump didn't do it with Biden, which is extremely petty, obviously. Going into my fears of the Joe Biden presidency. One, back to business imperialism. Now, I'm not talking about the extreme imperialism that we're probably going to learn about that took place in the Trump era. And a lot of that bravado, preparing for war rhetoric. What worries me is what will be leaked, either by a leaker who finds out what the hell happened in the Trump presidency, foreign policy-wise, or by the Biden presidency just releasing all of Trump's dirty work through the Freedom of Information Act. And even then, I wonder how much of it we're really going to see, because unfortunately, with the Freedom of Information Act, there's a lot of shit that can be redacted. Look at the CIA torture report. That is something to take into account. I also fear this. We saw a lot of protests happening for racial justice, from BLM to the Black Bloc, and we saw many of those protesters get needlessly brutalized by an overly gung-ho militarized police that was willing to brutalize and kidnap protesters off the damn street. And that is scary. I mean, these guys came in black vans and shit and just took random activists off the street like we were in some fucking fascist state. It was terrifying what the hell happened. And obviously activists, when that happened, were like, who the fuck are you? What are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? And they didn't say anything. I mean, you don't fucking detain people unless they're a threat. You don't fucking grab random fucking people off the street. Okay? This is the United States of America. We should have some semblance of standards of what the hell our law enforcement can and cannot do. And we should hold our government officials and our police officers to a higher standard if They want to be seen as a legitimate power structure. And honestly, during the Trump presidency, I believe, frankly, the federal government was under so much pressure to prove it was a legitimate power structure. And in a lot of ways, I think it failed to prove so. Why? Well, going back to those protests, I'm aware you had a lot of property damage and people getting hurt during those protests. Unfortunately, while a lot of these protests did start out peaceful, they escalated into violence, mostly due to the cops escalating and egging on the situation, which is absolutely disgusting and terrifying, but is not unheard of within the United States. Look at the 1960s. And I mean, really look at the 1960s, not the whitewashed version of history that we're taught in K through 12. It is very disturbing, and it is very fucked up, for lack of a better word. Another thing I really want to state here is I truly fear that many liberals who were protesting a lot, either at the Women's March, the various women marches that took place during the Trump presidency, to now, will no longer be taking place. Now, that's due to Biden and Trump having vastly different policies when it comes to abortion rights and women's rights in general. Joe Biden did create the Violence Against Women Act. Unfortunately, the Violence Against Women Act was part of the damn crime bill, and the crime bill was a disaster. So my main hope is that since Biden is president and he is at this crucial moment, that he can redeem himself to the best that he can. And I want Joe Biden to succeed as president. I want him to do well as president. I want him to truly help us as American citizens. With that said, we cannot get comfortable again. What do I mean by that? It's very difficult to analyze the protests that took place in the 21st century, because there have been a lot of protests. Whether we're looking at the anti-war movement from the Bush era, which unfortunately was seen as fringe, and also unfortunate that all of the anti-war protesters were proven right. You had the Occupy Wall Street movement of the Obama era, as well as the Tea Party movement. Now, if you want to know which of those was genuine, Occupy Wall Street, the Tea Party movement was funded by the Koch brothers, which you can blame for the Trump presidency, because the Tea Party movement really set our country back and doomed us to having a Trump presidency. And now we move to the Biden era, where he has to deal with a pandemic, an economic recession. I have seen news reports that try to put this into a larger context, that there hasn't been this great of an emergency since Franklin Delano Roosevelt was president. And as skeptical as I am of Joe Biden, I truly hope that the social democrats that are in Congress, such as Bernie Sanders, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Jamar Bowman, Cory Bush, and other members of Congress really push Biden to use the bully pulpit, to use the Senate majority that he has, and to use the majority in Congress that he has to pass as strong a progressive agenda as possible. Because I believe if he does that, it will really, one, prove a lot of the naysayers, like myself, wrong, which I would love to be proven wrong about Joe Biden being a standard neoliberal continuation of his predecessor, which I think many people who were liberal were hoping for, because they look at the Obama year as this vast beacon of optimism and progress, even though the Obama presidency has a lot of dark sides to it. I'm currently watching a documentary, Risk, which is done by the same person who did Citizen4. If you don't know what the film Risk is, that is a documentary about Julian Assange and the various struggles that he had to deal with WikiLeaks. Really fucking good documentary, by the way. Citizen 4 is the documentary about Edward Snowden. I'm extremely tempted to just... Okay, let me just show you really quick. Okay, I don't know why I grabbed the movie Snowden, a movie that I've owned for 4 years and I've never watched. Probably because I saw this first, Citizen 4, which is basically this movie, but what actually happened. And then you have Risk, which is in the region-free Blu-ray player. And this is about Julian Assange. I find this to be a very fascinating documentary. I'm really enjoying it. If you are a lover of civil liberty, and this is going to sound like a right-wing, uber, jingoistic phrase, and a lover of freedom and liberty, then I would highly recommend you check this out as well, because Julian Assange is a complicated figure, and I love that this does not sugarcoat it. It's not biased about Julian Assange. It obviously takes the stance that Julian Assange was correct, and that his work with leaking the war crimes of the United States was justified, but it also talks about the controversies and brings them up, which, kudos. Laura Poitras is a great filmmaker. And I mispronounced her name, I bet, because I mispronounce everybody's freaking name. Sometimes. Oh, that's another thing I wanted to bring up. With the Biden presidency, I do fear that Joe Biden will continue the Obama-era mass surveillance. I don't know how much he will expand it. His Secretary of Defense truly startles me in that department, because he came from the defense industry, and those people really, really, really do not like whistleblowers like Snowden and Julian Assange. Well, Julian Assange is a journalist. If I want to talk about whistleblowers, I obviously have to talk about Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden. I think I'm worried about complacency ultimately, because complacency happened a lot during the Obama presidency. And I'm talking about complacency from a lot of liberals, or maybe the center left, by American standards. I know I'm going all over the place, but my brain keeps struggling to figure out the right words to describe Joe Biden. Joe Biden so far, based on what he's done as president in only, 4 days? Almost 4, less than 4 days as I'm recording this video, has probably been the most progressive president of my life so far. Now, that isn't a lot to say, because when I say my lifetime, I'm 25 years old. I had Bill Clinton, but I was a baby then, so I don't remember what the hell Bill Clinton was like as president. I had George W. Bush, who I vividly remember as president of the United States, who was horrible. I have Obama, who I have a lot of mixed feelings about, and you would think, considering how far left I am, I would absolutely despise Obama. But the best way I can describe my view of Obama is there is the libertarian socialist me that absolutely despises him. And there is also the 12-year-old boy that saw Obama, that idolized Obama, that saw Obama as one of his heroes. And it's hard to articulate those emotions on camera adequately. One thing I will say about the Joe Biden era is that Biden has every opportunity to be as aggressive as possible, because the fortunate thing about Trump not really being a government man, not holding any elected office until he was elected president, is that while he had basically the perfect majority, I mean, he could have passed a much worse agenda. I mean, not saying Trump's agenda wasn't horrible, But if Trump was more competent, he could have really been way worse than he was. Thankfully, Trump was a lazy asshole. He didn't know what the fuck he was doing, and it showed. Because he had Mitch McConnell and Paul Ryan, two very far-right Republicans, who, if Trump was smart, he could have used to destroy Obamacare. I mean, pretty much he did destroy Obamacare, but as the early tenure of his presidency proved, and as I said in videos in the past, that they had no healthcare plan. I mean, when you look at Obamacare, it is a Republican healthcare plan because you're relying on market health insurance, which that terminology really is disgusting. And healthcare that is dependent on a person having a job. And this pandemic has proved that if we had Medicare for all, and had we had a competent president in the past 4 years, the pandemic would have sucked, but it probably wouldn't have been as bad. And if Trump hadn't been a little bitch and had actually worked with Joe Biden, because why the fuck do I keep hoping and wishing and wanting Donald Trump to have been a competent president, to have some sense of compassion? Because, as I have documented, and as I ranted about, and as I have studied, Donald Trump had no idea what he was doing. He was just a shoot from the hip type of guy. I mean, this man, oh my God, it is truly going to be fucking amazing what the hell is going to come out about that presidency in the next couple of years. Because, I mean, Obama really set a horrible precedent for being tough with whistleblowers, and the worst shit Obama did, Trump amplified. I always go back to this when people say, well, Trump, foreign policy-wise, was pretty good. No. Donald Trump, in his first year, surpassed Obama's civilian death count. His first year. And ever since that report, I don't believe we have had further publicly available information on Trump's civilian death count with drone strikes. That should frighten everybody. Not to mention the Capitol coup, the attempted and failed Capitol coup that took place on the 6th. It's kind of weird. This video, I said I wasn't going to do any more Trump videos, but here I am, still doing rants about Donald Trump. I think it's just because it's only been a few days, and we are seeing a much more articulate president. And you look at that, and you compare it to Trump, and you go, oh yeah, that's how a president is supposed to be. If you are to have a president, the president should make you feel at ease. The president should be presenting themselves as someone who knows what the fuck they're doing. This is what I have to bring up now because I titled this video, My Concerns in the Post-Trump Era and the Biden Era Going Forward. Biden has to end the kids in cages shit. Like now. He has to do it right the hell now, okay? If Joe Biden can overturn Trump's border wall, and Joe Biden can end the Muslim ban within his first few days as president, Biden must end the family separation shit, and he should probably, frankly, look into abolishing ICE and establishing a new type of immigration agency that isn't sociopathic like those motherfuckers are. Doubt he'll do that, but I think if Joe Biden wants any progressive street cred, he should fucking do that. Right now. I'm not even fucking around. Do it now. Biden has proved that he is willing to get rid of Trump's stain on America. So there's literally no excuse why he can't just end Trump's hard border policies. There's no excuse as to why Joe Biden cannot undo every single shitty thing that Donald Trump did as president. Now, I do believe that what we will see is harsher treatment of white supremacist domestic terrorists, such as the Proud Boys, the Georgia Three Percenters, various other fascist groups that I can't think of right now. However, I must also repeat, like what Ilhan Omar wisely said, we must not let the Capitol attack be an excuse to allow a second Patriot Act. And in fact, we should just repeal the Patriot Act. We should just repeal the National Defense Authorization Act. There were a lot of shitty things that happened with previous presidencies within the 21st century. I mean, Joe Biden has the perfect opportunity to show how much he has evolved since his tenure as a senator and since his tenure as vice president. He really, really, really has the perfect opportunity to almost right the wrongs that he committed. Why am I bringing this up? Because I look at the 2020 election and I go back to the primaries and I think of Bernie Sanders. And I think of Bernie Sanders' criminal justice reform, which was really fucking solid. I'm going to leave a link in the description about how solid that criminal justice policy was. It showed a man who was willing to undo the failures that he voted for when he was a congressman. And I hope Joe Biden is willing to do that as well. Because many of the worst reactionary policies that we saw take place in the United States, Joe Biden supported. He was a huge proponent of the Iraq War. He basically wrote the first draft of the Patriot Act. He was a huge proponent of the surveillance state. And we've seen what happens when the worst type of person gets into office and uses those systems to their own ends, and also how ineffective they are. So my hope really is that we pressure Joe Biden and we push him to being the next Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I hope I look back at this video and I don't laugh at that part in a few years. Because, hey, future me, don't laugh. I'm trying to be optimistic here. Really trying to be optimistic. And it's freaking hard. I really hope Joe Biden surprises me in the best way possible. Because he already has shown a strong, promising start. They're baby steps, but they're pretty good. So with that in mind, live long and prosper and have a good day.